Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some headlines of today's newspaper from around the world is Adefemi Akinsoya. Femi Femo, or come on, man. That's me.
That's me. Good morning. How's everybody doing?
Yeah,
Hope everyone had a good weekend.
Yes.
Good. And it is been by. It's the beginning of Holy Week, is it not?
It's the beginning of Holy Week, so very demure until we get to Easter.
Get to Sunday, right? Because they never gave dead. All righty. Let me tell you what's happening around the world now. Russia has crossed any lines of decency. Those are the words of the U.S. envoy to Ukraine, Russia, Keith Kellogg, after Russian ballistic missiles hit Sumy, a city in northeast Ukraine, killing at least 34 people and injuring more than 117 others. Now, images and videos of the aftermath show bloody bodies scattered in the streets around the impact of these missiles. At least 2 children were killed. Now, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said the strike hit right in the heart of the city on Palm Sunday. He said so in his evening message. He also went on to say that only completely deranged scum can do something like this. Now, Russia has not yet publicly commented on the attack. As mentioned at the beginning of this update, though, Sunday's strikes have been widely condemned by world leaders, including the US envoy to Ukraine and Russia. However, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer said that he was appalled by the attack, which he called horrific. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron said in a post on X that everyone knows that Russia alone wanted this war. Today, it is clear that Russia alone is choosing to continue it in defiance of human lives, international law, and President Trump's diplomatic offers. Strong measures are needed to impose a ceasefire on Russia. France is working tirelessly towards this end alongside its partners. Now, moving on to the African continent now, specifically Gabon, where former military leader Brice Oligui Nguema has stormed to a landslide victory, winning Saturday's presidential election with more than 90% of the vote. Nguema led the 2023 coup, which deposed Ali Bongo, ending nearly 60 years of a Bongo family dynasty. Now, 2 years later, his election victory consolidates his grip on power after defeating 7 opposition candidates. His main challenger, Billy Bainze, received just 3% of the votes. Now, more than 7 out of 10 registered voters did take part in the poll, which authorities and some observers say is signifying the election took place transparently and peacefully. However, there were complaints of some irregularities. Nevertheless, Nguema's win brings him a 7-year mandate and the resources to tackle the corruption and bad governance that characterized the Bongo's time in power. And finally, Peru's Congress has dropped its corruption investigation of President Dina Boluarte, shielding her from impeachment over allegations she accepted Rolex watches as bribes. Now, the subcommittee, this is one of my favorite pictures of the year, I just have to say. The subcommittee considered the accusations, recommended the case, which further worsened the president's already terrible unpopularity rating, be dismissed. She's 62 years old, and she could potentially still face charges when she leaves office in July 2026. And loses her presidential immunity. Now, the so-called Rolex Gate scandal erupted in March 2024 when the discovery of a trove of undeclared luxury Rolex watches and jewelry in the president's possession was found in her official residence. Now, Boluarte testified to prosecutors that the watches had been banned by a friend, but the nation's had rather been borrowed or given to her by a friend just temporarily, but the nation's attorney general submitted to Congress a formal accusation of bribery, which is what triggered this process. Now, she faces a separate probe over an unannounced 2-week absence she took back in 2023 for nose surgery, which she insists was medical and not cosmetic, during which she did not delegate powers to someone else. Now, Peru itself does suffer from chronic political instability and has 6 presidents in the past 8 years. I know we don't have a lot of time. We don't have any time for conversations, but we will move on to newspaper headlines. As ever, we begin with the front page of This Day, and This Day does report on the presidency's response to a court in Washington, D.C., ordering the FBI and DEA, that's the Drug Enforcement Agency, to publicly release reports of their investigations which name President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Now, the order links back to a 2023 lawsuit citing the Freedom of Information Act by an American activist, Aaron Greenspan. The investigations in question allege allegedly refer to a heroin drug ring based in Chicago in the early 1990s. If you cast your minds back to the 2023 presidential election here in Nigeria, there were reports of then candidate Tinubu forfeiting $460,000 to the US government in 1993. Monies allegedly linked to drug trafficking. It is this information that the Nigerian presidency, through a statement released by presidential spokesperson Bayo Ononuga, says there is essentially nothing new to be revealed, clarifying that President Tinubu was never indicted and that their own lawyers are already in the process of studying this ruling. As ever, we have to reserve comments or any type of condemnation until the actual release of these reports, which are highly anticipated. Now, the story also was picked up by the Daily Trust and The Nation this morning as part of their headlines. Moving on to the New Telegraph, though, it leads on another layer of the consequences following the US 14% tariff on Nigerian exports. This time, it's Nigeria, which is no longer on track to meet its $7 billion non-oil export revenue projection. This is as the paper reports that US President Donald Trump's efforts to build a relationship with President Tinubu to expand US investments in Nigeria and across Africa continues. To the front of the Punch, it shows that the battle for River State continues as the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Lateef Fagbemi, has reportedly started drafting the response of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to the People's Democratic Party governor's lawsuit challenging the declaration of a state of emergency in River State. Meanwhile, the PDP governors who have filed this lawsuit have engaged 7 senior advocates of Nigeria and 6 other attorneys to battle the federal government at the Supreme Court on what powers the president has to declare emergency rule in a state and suspend a democratically elected institution of said state. The Guardian leads with Labour bracing for another wage renegotiation against the backdrop of Nigeria's high cost of living. And meanwhile, the Vanguard also reports on President Tinubu's journey to re-election and his moves to stop APC members' defection to the Social Democratic Party and the Congress for Progressive Change bloc. Finally, the Daily Independent's picture headline kicks off Holy Week, showing members of St. Leo's Catholic Church during their procession to mark Palm Sunday over in Ikeja. Now, Palm Sunday takes place a week before Easter Sunday to commemorate Jesus Christ's entry into Jerusalem and the beginning, essentially, of his final journey. Is that correct?
Yes, that's absolutely correct.
All righty, those
Thank you so much, Adefemi. I wish we had time to unpack, but I believe we're going straight into business, aren't we?
Yeah, but I think, yeah, that's right. Adefemi, well done. Yeah.